was never meant to be seen, a collection of thoughts sealed away behind the thick walls of Buckingham Palace, hidden from the world. Queen Elizabeth's private diary, an artifact of secrecy, untouched for decades, has surfaced. The very pages that once held her deepest reflections now offer a glimpse into the past, a past that was never meant to be revisited. Inside, shocking confessions reveal a side of the monarchy that few ever imagined. For years, whispers of its existence circulated among royal insiders, but no one could ever confirm its truth. How could something so personal, so guarded, make its way beyond the palace gates? Some believe it was intentionally buried, a secret the monarchy wanted to forget. Others suggest it was left behind, a remnant of history waiting to be uncovered. But one thing is certain, inside its pages lie chilling accounts of Diana's struggles, her final days, and possibly the answers to the lingering mysteries surrounding her tragic death. The diary does not read like an ordinary royal record. It is not filled with formalities or well-constructed statements meant for the public eye. These entries are raw, personal, and, at times, unsettling. The words paint a picture of a queen torn between duty and human emotion, between the traditions of the crown and the undeniable presence of a woman who changed everything. Diana was different, and that difference disrupted the delicate balance the monarchy fought to maintain. Among the entries, a pattern emerges. The Queen's thoughts on Diana shift over time, from initial admiration to quiet concern and finally to a sense of helplessness. She writes of the early warnings, the struggles Diana faced, and the pressures that weighed down on her. But then, as the pages continue, the tone darkens. The entries leading up to August 1997 carry a haunting undertone, a subtle but undeniable hint that something was not right. One particular passage stands out. It is brief but heavy with meaning. The Queen notes a conversation with an unnamed royal advisor, a conversation about Diana's growing independence, her increasing presence in the media, and the way she seemed to be slipping further from their control. The Queen does not write in direct accusations, but there is a feeling of unease in her words, as if she sensed something looming on the horizon. Was it worry, or was it knowledge? Another entry recalls a tense moment between Diana and the royal family. It suggests that Diana had voiced concerns about her safety, hinting that she felt watched, monitored, and possibly even manipulated. The Queen's response in the diary is unsettlingly neutral, neither confirming nor denying Diana's fears. And yet, in the absence of outright dismissal, there is a question that lingers. Did the Queen know more than she let on? If this diary is to be believed, it does not just recount history, it rewrites it. The polished, controlled image of the monarchy begins to fracture, revealing emotions that were carefully concealed from the public eye. These pages do not just tell a story of royal duty and tradition, they expose the quiet turmoil within the palace walls, the battles fought in silence, and the secrets that were never meant to leave the confines of the crown. The discovery of this diary changes everything, but the real question remains, what exactly did the Queen write about Diana? From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. A young, beautiful woman stepping into a world of power and prestige, destined to be the future Queen of England. But behind the palace doors, a silent war had begun. Diana was not like the others who had come before her. She was different, too different. In the world of the monarchy, the difference was dangerous. Queen Elizabeth's diary reveals her first impressions of Diana, and they are far from the warm welcome the world assumed. At first, there was admiration. Diana was poised, well-spoken, and had the potential to uphold the royal image. But beneath the surface, the Queen noted something else. Diana's warmth and openness, the way she connected with people so effortlessly, was unlike anything the palace had seen before. And while the public adored it, the royal family saw it as a threat. The early warning signs of conflict appear throughout the diary. The Queen's entries described growing tension and a sense of unease whenever Diana was around. She was not one to blindly follow orders, and that made her unpredictable. The monarchy was built on structure, control, and tradition. Diana challenged all three. She spoke about emotions in a way that made the rest of the family uncomfortable. She sought genuine human connection, while the monarchy preferred distance and formality. She embraced modern values, while the palace clung to centuries-old customs. One passage in the diary recounts a private conversation in which the Queen reflects on Diana's refusal to conform. "She does not understand that we are not like ordinary people," one entry reads. "There are ways things are done, and there are reasons for them." The frustration in the Queen's words is clear. Diana was trying to change something that was never meant to be changed. It was not just the rules that Diana opposed, it was the very culture of the palace, The expectations placed upon her were suffocating. She was expected to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, and even carry herself with the weight of a woman who belonged to history rather than the present. But Diana was not interested in being a royal symbol. She wanted to be herself. As her independence grew, so did the divide between her and the royal family. The Queen's diary notes instances where Diana broke protocol, whether by choosing her causes, speaking to the press, or simply behaving in a way that felt natural to her. What the world saw as kindness, the monarchy saw as recklessness. The Queen's writings suggest a growing concern, an unspoken fear that Diana was slipping further from their grasp. There were attempts to control her, to remind her of the role she had been given. But Diana was not one to be controlled. She pushed back against the expectations, refusing to let the institution define her. And with each act of defiance, the tension inside the palace walls grew stronger. One entry from the diary stands out, a rare moment where the Queen acknowledges the inevitability of the conflict. Perhaps she was never meant to fit, she writes. Perhaps she was never meant to stay. The war between Diana and the monarchy was not just about rules, it was about identity. Diana was fighting to be herself in a place that demanded she become someone else. And as the battle continued, it was no longer just about tradition versus modernity, it was about survival. Diana's struggles weren't just external, the biggest battles were within herself. Behind the palace's golden gates and towering walls, Diana suffered in silence. To the world, she was the people's princess, graceful, compassionate, adored by millions. But behind closed doors, she was fighting a battle no one could see. A battle against herself. A battle against an institution that did not understand pain. Queen Elizabeth's diary entries reveal a painful truth. The monarchy had always operated under the belief that emotions were best left unspoken. Diana, however, was different. She felt everything deeply, and she refused to hide it. The diary's early mentions of Diana's struggles are subtle, almost distant, as if the Queen herself did not fully grasp the weight of the situation. She is troubled, one entry states simply. Another acknowledges the tension Diana felt, but offers no solution, just a quiet, lingering observation. She finds no comfort here. Diana's mental health struggles began early in her marriage. She was barely 20 years old when she entered the royal family, already feeling overwhelmed, isolated, and trapped. The diary suggests that the Queen noticed Diana's withdrawn nature, but the expectation was clear: she was to endure it, just as generations before her had. No complaints, no emotions, no weakness. Bulimia became Diana's escape. The diary describes the concern over her fluctuating weight and fainting spells, but there is no acknowledgement of the deeper cause. To the monarchy, it was a problem to be managed, not a cry for help to be answered. Diana later spoke about it openly, describing how it became a way to regain control in a life where she had none. But inside the palace, her struggles were whispered about, not addressed. The royal family did not discuss emotions, they did not discuss pain. Her anxiety worsened with time. The constant scrutiny, the relentless expectations, and the suffocating pressure all took a toll. She was expected to smile, to wave, to be the perfect princess, and she did until she couldn't anymore. She begged for help. She spoke about her dark thoughts, her fears, her loneliness, and still no one listened. The diary hints at the Queen's concern, but also her helplessness. She struggles, one entry reads. I do not know what to do. It is one of the few times the Queen expresses doubt, but duty always takes precedence over personal matters. Diana broke the silence herself. She spoke openly about her mental health, her eating disorder, and her pain. It was shocking. No royal had ever done such a thing, and instead of support, she was met with resistance. The monarchy feared what this openness could mean. It was not their way. But for Diana, it was the only way. She was not just fighting to be heard, she was fighting to survive, and as time went on, her suffering was no longer just internal. Diana's fears extended beyond mental health. She feared for her life. Diana had always felt watched. At first, she dismissed it as the price of being a royal. The cameras, the flashing lights, the endless scrutiny, she had learned to live with that. But what haunted her wasn't the paparazzi. It was something far more sinister, something she couldn't escape even within the palace walls. The Queen's diary mentions Diana's deep unease, though at times it reads more like an observation than a warning. She feels unsafe, one entry states. She believes there are forces against her. The Queen does not confirm nor dismiss these fears, but there is a subtle tone of uneasiness, as if she, too, had sensed the growing tension around Diana's life. Diana's fear was more than a feeling. She spoke about it openly, confiding in close friends that she believed she was being watched, followed, and possibly even manipulated. She suspected that her movements were being tracked and her conversations listened to. And she wasn't wrong. The royal family had a history of controlling information, managing narratives, and ensuring nothing leaked beyond palace walls. But Diana was not someone who could be controlled. Then, there was the letter, perhaps the most chilling piece of evidence that Diana's paranoia was justified. Months before her death, she wrote a note to her butler, Paul Burrell. In it, she predicted her death. The words were precise, haunting: "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury." The letter sent shockwaves through those who read it. How could she have known? And more importantly, did the Queen know about it? The diary does not mention this letter specifically, but some entries suggest the Queen was aware of Diana's increasing distress. The Queen's reflections suggest a complicated mix of doubt and concern. On one hand, she acknowledges Diana's fears. On the other, she seems reluctant to accept them as reality. She is troubled. She sees dangers everywhere, one entry reads. Was this a dismissal of Diana's fears, or was it a quiet acknowledgement of a reality too dangerous to put into words? The more Diana tried to expose the truth, the more isolated she became. She spoke about hidden enemies within the palace, people who wanted her silenced. But who were they? The diary does not name names. Perhaps the Queen didn't know, or perhaps some things were never meant to be written down. Diana's fear was not a delusion, it was a warning, and then, in August 1997, her worst nightmare became a reality. The Queen's final diary entry before Diana's death carries a tone of sadness and unease, as if she sensed something was coming but could do nothing to stop it. She is restless. She wishes for a life beyond this one, the words read. Short, almost cryptic, but heavy with meaning. Diana was ready for a new beginning, but she would never get the chance. Paris, August 31, 1997. What should have been another late-night escape from the paparazzi turned into one of the most shocking tragedies in modern history. Diana, alongside her companion Dodi Fayed, left the Ritz Hotel in a black Mercedes, hoping to avoid the relentless press. But within minutes, the chase began. As the car entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, it lost control, crashed into a pillar, and ended in devastation. Hanai Paul, the driver, and Dodi Fayed were killed instantly. Diana, still alive, lay trapped in the wreckage. The only survivor was her bodyguard, who suffered severe injuries and claimed to remember nothing. But from the very beginning, something felt off. For a woman who was one of the most photographed and watched individuals in the world, there was an eerie absence of security footage from the tunnel that night. Not a single camera, out of the many placed along the route, captured the exact moment of impact. A coincidence? Or something more? Then there was the mystery of the white Fiat Uno, a vehicle spotted near the crash scene. Paint marks from the Fiat were found on Diana's car, suggesting a collision or some kind of contact just before the accident. Yet, despite investigations, the car's driver was never officially identified. Reports suggested it belonged to a security guard, who later repainted it and refused to answer further questions. Was this car involved? If so, why was it never fully investigated? The most troubling piece of the puzzle was Henri Paul, the man behind the wheel. Reports claim he was intoxicated, but those who saw him before the crash insisted he showed no signs of being drunk. Even stranger, large amounts of money had appeared in his bank account in the months leading up to the crash. Was he just a reckless driver, or was there another force at play? Diana's final moments raise even more questions. She was still alive when first responders arrived, but instead of being rushed to the nearest hospital, she was taken on a longer route, delaying critical care. Why? Could she have been saved? The Queen's diary does not give direct answers, but it does leave behind a sense of unease. One entry, written shortly after Diana's death, suggests doubt, even within the palace. The diary suggests that even the Queen had doubts about the official story. In the days following Diana's death, the world grieved. Millions of people flooded the streets, leaving flowers outside Buckingham Palace. Tears were shed for the woman who had become a symbol of love, compassion, and kindness. But inside the palace, there was only silence. The Queen, the most powerful figure in the monarchy, remained behind closed doors. The public was outraged. Why had there been no immediate statement, no visible mourning? Why did it seem as though the royal family was carrying on as if nothing had happened? The monarchy had always distanced itself from personal emotion, but this time, the distance felt like cruelty. Behind the scenes, however, the Queen was not unmoved. The diary suggests a far more complex picture, one of guilt, regret, and internal conflict. One entry, written in the days after Diana's funeral, stands out. "She was troubled, she was lost, and I did not help her find her way." It is a rare moment of personal reflection, a glimpse into a mind that rarely reveals its true emotions. The Queen had spent years upholding tradition, ensuring that the monarchy remained unshaken, unchallenged. But Diana had changed everything, and now, in her absence, the Queen seemed to be grappling with a painful realization: had she failed the woman who had once been destined to be Queen? For the first time, the Queen faced a crisis she could not control. The anger from the people was unlike anything she had seen before. The monarchy had always maintained a calculated detachment, but Diana had broken that mold. She had made the world feel, and in her death, she had made them demand the same from the royal family. The Queen's diary does not make excuses. Instead, it acknowledges a painful truth: Diana had been different, and the monarchy had never fully accepted her. "She was not one of us," another entry states, but perhaps that is what made her special. These words, though subtle, hint at regret, a realization that Diana's refusal to conform had not been a weakness, but rather her greatest strength. The funeral procession was a defining moment. The sight of young William and Harry walking behind their mother's coffin, forced to grieve in front of the world, was almost unbearable. The Queen had no choice but to finally address the people, breaking from tradition to acknowledge Diana's impact. It was the first time she had publicly spoken about emotion, loss, and change. Even years later, the diary suggests that Diana's death left a permanent mark on the Queen. Though she never openly spoke of regret, her private writings tell a different story. There is an unmistakable sense of loss, a feeling that something has been left unfinished. But Diana's story didn't end with her death, it became a legacy. Diana was gone, but her presence never faded. If anything, her absence only made her impact stronger. The world had lost a princess, but it had gained something even greater, a legacy that refused to be silenced. And even within the walls of Buckingham Palace, where tradition ruled above all else, change was beginning to take shape. The Queen's diary acknowledges it in subtle but undeniable ways. In the years following Diana's death, the monarchy faced a shift unlike anything before. One entry, written long after the tragedy, reflects on the transformation. "She changed things. She made them see us differently." It is perhaps the closest admission that Diana had forced the royal family to evolve.
For centuries, the monarchy had operated at a distance from the people, reserved, polished, and untouchable. Diana broke that barrier. She walked through minefields, held the hands of AIDS patients, and embraced the very people others turned away from. She didn't just represent royalty, she represented humanity. And when she was gone, her sons, William and Harry, carried that mission forward. The Queen's writings reveal moments of recognition, an understanding that Diana's influence had extended far beyond the woman herself. The world had changed because of her, and the monarchy had no choice but to follow. In public, the royals became more engaged, more visible, and more in touch with the people. But more importantly, they became more human. William, the future king, continued his mother's work, focusing on mental health, homelessness, and children's welfare. He spoke of emotions in a way no monarch before him had dared to. Harry, too, carried Diana's rebellious spirit, stepping away from royal duties to forge his path. Whether inside or outside the institution, they both kept their mother's values alive. Even the Queen, who had spent decades upholding tradition, could not ignore Diana's impact. A later diary entry hints at a rare moment of reflection. Perhaps we were too set in our ways. Perhaps she saw what we could not. It was an admission, however quiet, that Diana had not just reshaped the monarchy, she had challenged it to be better. But perhaps the greatest shift was one of emotion. Diana had lived openly, vulnerably, and honestly. Something the royal family had always resisted. After her death, that resistance began to fade. The monarchy started showing more warmth, more connection, and more acknowledgement of the people they served.
Diana had won the battle she never lived to see, but one question remains: was Diana's death an accident? Even after decades, the questions refused to fade. Was Diana's death truly an accident, or was there something far more sinister at play? The official report stated the crash was caused by high speed and an intoxicated driver, but for many, the pieces never quite fit. The Queen's diary does not provide definitive answers, but it does leave behind a shadow of doubt, a lingering sense that even she may have questioned the truth. Diana had predicted it herself: "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident." These chilling words, written in a letter to her butler months before her death, remain one of the most haunting pieces of evidence. She feared she was being watched, manipulated, and controlled, and she believed she was in danger. Then, there were the missing security tapes. For one of the most photographed and followed women in the world, it seemed impossible that not a single camera captured the crash. 14 surveillance cameras lined the tunnel's route that night, yet somehow none of them were recording. Was it just a failure of technology? Or was something deliberately erased? The mystery of the white Fiat Uno adds another layer of suspicion. Paint marks from the car were found on Diana's wrecked Mercedes, yet the driver was never officially identified. The car's owner, a security guard, repainted it shortly after the accident and refused to speak about that night. Coincidence or cover-up? Even the medical response raised questions. Diana was still alive after the crash, conscious for nearly an hour, yet instead of being rushed to the nearest hospital, she was taken on a longer route for treatment. Why? Could she have survived if she had received care sooner? The decisions made that night have fueled endless theories, each one more unsettling than the last. The most controversial question of all remains royal involvement. Was Diana's growing independence and influence a threat to the institution? Did her willingness to speak out about her mental health, the pressures of royal life, about her struggles with Charles, become too much? And if so, who stood to benefit from her silence? The Queen's final reflections in her diary offer no accusations, no outright confirmation of wrongdoing. But there is something else, something unspoken, something unsettling. One of the last entries written about Diana reads, "So much we will never know, so much we will never say." Perhaps that was the closest the Queen ever came to admitting doubt. The truth about Diana's death may never be fully known, but one thing is certain: her story will never be forgotten. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe for more exciting videos.